Hi folks, Gav here, and it's been a while since I made any gaming videos, but Elden Ring's kind of a special game, and I want to give you guys my thoughts on it. A lot of folks have been asking for my thoughts on this game, and I have a lot of thoughts on this game. Basically, to sum it up, Elden Ring, very much like its landscape for me, is a game of extreme highs and extreme lows. It's a game that gave me some of my favorite gaming moments ever. That at one point I was convinced it was the best game I'd ever played. And it's also a game that has such extreme lows, particularly with boss design, that it's kind of killed my excitement for the future of the series if this is the direction they're going to go. So yeah, very, very high peaks and low lows. So before I get into this, I'm a major From Software fanboy. Like, they're my favorite games company. I've loved every single one of their games over the last decade. Dark Souls, Sekiro, Bloodborne, which is probably still my favorite of theirs. I just love this company. I've beaten every one of their games multiple times, beaten every single boss in the series. Love it. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, you guys know I was already going into this with a biased perspective. So I've beaten this game twice now and finished all of the bosses in the game stubbornly in some cases. For like 80 to 85% of this game, it's easily one of, if not the best game I've ever played. I was so in love with this game for like the entire first 100 or so hours I played. It was just, I was finding it hard to think any game could ever top this. Unfortunately, the final few hours and the end game is one of the most miserable experiences I've ever had with a video game, to the point that it makes me dread the future of the series, because if this is the direction they're going, I won't enjoy these games anymore. It's just crazy. It would be unfair to say the quality drops off, but there are some choices made by FromSoft in the final few hours of the game that brought it from one of my favorite games ever to a game that I didn't even want to finish at one point because I was having such a bad time. And basically, it all comes down to the fact that in the final few hours, in my opinion, their mantra of tough but fair just gets completely thrown out the window, and they sacrifice fun for difficulty, which to me, they had tread that line a few times in previous games, but they never quite crossed it fully. But in this game, I just... I like to have fun with video games, guys. Life is far too short. If I have to invest an amount of time into beating a boss in a video game that to me it starts to become a chore, I would rather invest that time somewhere else in my life that's going to be more beneficial to me, like guitar, piano, writing. Okay, that's just me. Some people love this kind of stuff, but for me, it's not it. So things I absolutely loved in this game: the exploration, the sense of complete and utter freedom, the lack of condescension. This game never patronizes you. It doesn't treat you like an idiot. It just plonks you out and says, go find out what to do and how to do it, and off you go. And I just love that. It could have done with some more tutorials about like mechanics and stats and all that. I'm all for telling the player how to do that. But in regards to letting you go out into the world and find your own way, I absolutely love the lack of guidance. I don't like how they do the NPC quests. I feel those could be much better explained and much better. I don't know. I don't think the game needs a journal or anything, but I do think some more guidance with the NPC quests would be nice. And also, there's no reason that you have to have so many miserable NPC stories all the time. Give us some hope and some light in this world. I know there's a couple of NPCs that can get happy endings, but wow, I'm getting so tired of every NPC just being worse off for me having spoken to them, you know? The world in this game is incredible. I'm a sucker for exploration. It's my favorite thing in games. And this is one of the most beautiful games you'll ever play. The environments are incredible. The sense of scale is epic. from the buildings to the mountains to the verticality. It has some of the most beautiful, stunning areas you'll ever see. Leyndell, the capital city, is one of my favorite locations in a game, flat out. The reveal of that was like an Orlando all over again, you know. The atmosphere is completely unique and for the most part, like, just spellbinding. Absolutely love it. Soundtrack is nice, as usual with the Souls series. Special shout out to Radagon's theme towards the end, which is a wonderful moment. And also to the music in Leyndell, the capital city, which just haunts my soul. It's so beautiful. But I felt it could have used a few more pieces because it can become pretty grating hearing the same single mournful cello pieces over and over, particularly in the early areas like Limgrave, where new players are going to be spending a lot of time. Speaking of new players, this is definitely the easiest FromSoft game for beginners to get into. I think anyone can have fun with this game. There are a few very difficult enemies at the start, but if you see it in terms of that's the game teaching you to go away and come back later, then you won't have such a bad time. I've seen people go straight to Margit and beat their heads against him for hours and just die and die and die. You don't have to do that. You can go away and explore this beautiful world in 100 different directions, level up your character. There's about 30 to 40 hours of gameplay you can do before Margit, you know? And by then you'll be so powerful that you'll stomp him. In fact, you don't even have to fight Margit. He's an optional boss, technically. But, you know, the area he's in is pretty important for resources and materials and things. So you probably should fight him. But, yeah, it's really... I won't say it's beginner-friendly, because it's not. FromSoft games never will be. But compared to their other games, it very much is. It gives you more tutorials than the others. It gives you more options. It gives you a summon system, which is fantastic. You can get these, like, spirits that you summon to help you fight some of the harder bosses or harder big fights in the game. And I think that was a fantastic addition. However, I think the summon system did compromise some of the bosses later in the way that they designed the bosses around them, but I'll get into that later. So yeah, if you're a new player, I highly recommend this as your first FromSoft game, because I think anyone of any skill level can have a lot of fun in the early areas of this game and up to and including the mid to mid-late game. After that point, things get a little bit hairy. I'll get onto that in a while. So yeah, I absolutely love Elden Ring. However, after the capital city and the Morgut boss fight, something changes with this game. I think what happened here is that because it's open world, it's quite easy to over level for a lot of the areas. So to compensate for this in the end game, they just really overtuned everything. Every enemy hits like a tank, even when you're at the soft level caps for vigor, which is your health, and your soft caps for attack stats and all that stuff. Your character just turns into a pathetic weakling at this point of the game. And I get that they didn't want people steamrolling the final few hours, because that was something that could happen in Dark Souls 1. But I don't know, I was okay with that. I'm like, if I've invested 140 hours into this game and my character, I want them to feel like a fucking big, strong badass. And it's okay if I steamroll a couple of bosses, you know? I earned it through my time. And I don't know, man, even with full heavy armor and full vigor, there were some enemies that could stun lock me into insta-kills, and there were enemies that could two-hit me, and bosses just... The bosses in this game have a level of difficulty that's basically pretty much beyond what I'm willing to endure. I don't play these games for their difficulty, to be honest. I've played them for the wonderful environments and stories and things. But usually if the reward is good enough, I'll struggle through the harder fights because I enjoy them. The bosses in this game have these really long, tedious attack combos. They do massive damage. And they have these really awkwardly delayed attacks just to fuck with you and catch you in your rolls. They fly around, they flail around, they jump around, and just when you think your turn to get a hit in, they jump away from you to the other side of the room. So you end up spending like 90% of the fight running around, dodging, watching the boss having all of the fun, and waiting for your turn to have some fun. Honestly, like some of the bosses in this game, particularly like especially Malenia, who, by the way, Malenia is like 2 tweaks away from being one of the best boss fights they've ever made. Her health regen thing is utter complete bullshit, especially seeing as she gets health back when you block it. And there's one move she has, the waterfall dance, that turns this fight from an amazing duel into just RNG nonsense. I've beaten her twice now, and I had zero fun on either attempt. And I went and did some co-op with her to try and, on my second run, I used co-op to beat her. And without fail, every single time she did the waterfall dance, one of my co-op partners would die. I'm like, it's just, that move is just so broken. There's never been anything like that in a FromSoft game that's that broken. Like, they've never had a move before that is this far beyond the achievable skill level of most of their players. Like, I know there's some Giga Chad gamers out there who will be like, oh, that move is easy, you just run away, dodge into it, dodge back, whatever. But yeah, it's the consensus I've seen on Reddit and everywhere is that this move is busted, okay? If you are good enough to dodge that move, awesome, good for you. Most of us are not. Even when you do learn how to dodge that move, the only way to do it is to make sure that you're far away from her when she even begins the wind-up, which means that you have to spend a lot of the fight not being near her, which means if you're a melee build, you're not attacking her, which is just not fun. And for me, and that's fine if they want to do that for the ultra-hardcore gamers, but for me personally, that makes me dread the future of the series and the direction they're going in, because I will not play a game where that becomes the norm. No way, not a hope. Like, she feels like a Sekiro boss, but we don't have Sekiro's defensive options to deal with it, you know? I also feel like the bosses, particularly in the end game, were designed to be fought with summons, which to me isn't as fun as learning to react to a really cool, flowing, intuitive boss moveset like the previous games. They're certainly less difficult with summons, but then they're not as fun or rewarding either. So, but without the summons, they just crush your soul. So there's no normal difficulty mode for the bosses. Like Dark Souls games used to let you organically kind of dance and flow with the boss movesets, dodging when it felt right and then punishing them in between moves. I get that they don't want to stagnate their style, but to me that style was so much more fun than this. Than learning the exact split second this like agonizingly long delayed attack is going to suddenly mash you into a pulp, and then hoping you might get a chance to attack back on one of the rare punishable moves these like crazy flailing comboing bosses have. And so many enemies in this game run away from you after hitting you, and that's just, for me, that's just so frustrating. Let me hit them back. You know, I don't know who From thought that was a fun mechanic to have enemies run away from you after hitting you. It just sucks for melee builds, you know. And the duo fights and the gang fights in this game are abysmal. They're absolutely awful. Enemies just haphazardly thrown together with no AI adjustments to fit a 2v1 battle. Like, it's baffling. They got this so perfect in Dark Souls 1 with Ornstein and Smough. Like, Ornstein and Smough is one of the best boss fights of all time. It stood the test of time. People still love that boss fight years and years later because it's so well designed. The bosses in this game that are duo fights are just completely haphazard. Yeah, oh, you fought one of these guys before? Now try fighting two of them. And I get, again, they're made easier by summons, but again, it's just not as fun as fighting a well-designed 2v1 that's designed to be fought 2v1, you know? Like, I don't know. So many of the hard bosses in previous games I loved. I remember spending an afternoon fighting Orphan of Kos in Bloodborne, which is pretty much the hardest boss in that game. And every time I died, I felt like I'd learned something new or got a little closer to victory. And it was so much fun. Like, it took me about 15 to 20 attempts to beat him. But when I did, it was so fun, and great. And I felt awesome. And I posted it on Twitter because I was so excited. And I never got that feeling from the late game bosses in Elden Ring. When I beat Malenia, I was just fucked off. I was pissed off. I was like, well, thank God I never have to do that again. And of course I did, but I probably will never fight her again at this point because I had just as miserable a time the second time through. Like, if you think of the bosses in the old games, Dancer of the Boreal Valley, Soul of Cinder, Slave Knight Gale, Sword Saint Ishin, Ornstein and Smough, Gehrman, all of these bosses were so much fun to learn and to fight. And yeah, they were all hard, but they were all really rewarding and they gave you a chance to fight back. And I feel like too many enemies in this game don't. I don't know. I feel like this is turning into a rant now and it's not really fair because I do absolutely love this game and it's so addictive and so amazing. I just feel it has this huge fatal flaw when it comes to the bosses and the end game difficulty. Like the final boss, the Elden Beast, it's basically a greatest hits compilation of all the worst Dark Souls tropes. It's too big to see what it's doing. It has these weird, unavoidable AoE damage attacks. It's really hard to read some of them. It constantly teleports to the other side of a massive arena. So you basically spend most of the fight running after it. I don't know what they were smoking when they made it, So yeah, some people may love this style and these changes, and for me, it kind of ruined what I always loved about the bosses in this series. How you always felt you were getting a little closer to the win by the end of each boss fight, and I just didn't get that in this game, and I just ended up using summons and cheesing through them because I just wasn't having any fun, which is a pity. But in general, like overall, if this game ended at Morgoth at the end of Leyndell, this would be an absolute 10 out of 10 game for me. Everything up to that point I loved. I really enjoyed the Margit boss fight. I enjoyed the Godric boss fight. I enjoyed Renala. Radahn, he was a bit much pre-nerf. But post-nerf, I love that boss fight. Morgoth, amazing. Moog in the optional area, another cool boss. Everything after Leyndell, for me, if that was removed from the game, this would be a easy 10 out of 10, 100, best game I've ever played. Unfortunately, that final 10 to 15% just drags it down a lot for me to a 9, which is, of course, a fantastic score. Remember, I'm not a game reviewer, I'm not a professional, I'm just a fan giving my opinions here. It's a 9 out of 10 game for me. If everything from the mountaintops of the giant onwards was gone, except, Farum Azula was pretty cool, but if the majority of the end game was gone, this would be a 10 out of 10 game for me, and if the boss design was different. I really hope they don't use this boss design philosophy in their future games because, it's just not for me. All right, folks, it's been nice talking to you. I don't do it enough these days. I would say I'll try and do it more, but I don't trust myself to keep that promise to you, so I won't. Look out for my Elden Ring songs, which will be coming very, very soon. They were delayed because I got stupid COVID and it fucked my voice up. But I'm kind of getting back now. You can probably hear my voice is a little bit tired. Take care of yourselves, and I hope you enjoyed the vid, and I hope you enjoy Elden Ring. Have a good one.